Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Dark Verse are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if genius Naruto was banished from Konoha and built a powerful harem part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. There was a boy in the village hidden in the leaves. His name was Naruto. He had blonde spiky hair and deep ocean blue eyes with 3 whisker-like marks on his cheeks. He was currently wearing a horrendous orange jumpsuit that looked like it had been through many fights. Naruto was not having a good day. First he failed the academy exam, again. That was only because he was sabotaged in every single test. Chunin exam level written test, spars where the teachers didn't hold back, rusty and bent kunai, etc. Then some demolition expert shinobi decided to blow up his apartment. Not just where he lived but the entire building itself, and the tenants who survived the explosion blamed him, the Kyuubi brat, for the incident. They wanted him to pay in either money or his life. And that's where the village pariah is now, trapped in a dead-end alley surrounded by pissed ninjas and civilians alike calling for his blood. Anbu are the elite of the village and boast about them being the greatest in speed and precision, and they still can't arrive to help me when I need it. I've sent a chakra pulse with as much power as an elite Jonin. Where the hell are they? He thought. Naruto was not a dumb blonde, and while he obviously had a long ways to go at being a smart and capable shinobi, he did grow suspicious at the fact that the Anbu guarding him actually showed up to save him until the last minute where he was inches away from death. Something was amiss, but he couldn't quite comprehend it. His thoughts were interrupted when one of the villagers backhanded him and sent him to the ground. I'm talking to you, demon. Are you going to submit and let us end your wretched life? The pink-haired woman demanded. A year ago he would have been terrified. A year ago he would have begged for mercy. A year ago he would have cried, but after all these years of beatings, hatred, scorn, and learning about why they hate him, he changed. He was gray, as they called it. He would only look out for himself and others he deems precious and not care about what these arrogant bigots thought. Naruto spat in her face. Go to hell, you loud flat-chested bitch. She once again backhanded him and pulled out a knife. You first, she cried as she brought the knife down towards his heart. But a kunai came whizzing out of nowhere and knocked the weapon out of her hand. They all turned to see an old man in white robes with multiple shinobis wearing armor and animal masks. Enough. Anbu, arrest them all. The Anbu did as they were told while the old man walked up to Naruto with a clearly concerned expressions across his wrinkly features. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? He asked. Naruto stood up, albeit slowly. He looked at him and answered. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little bruise. Though the bruise itself was half the size of a fist. Good. I'll take you to my office to discuss everything, the old man said with a warm smile as he put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and they both disappeared. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of the village, something was different about the village. The atmosphere itself was a combination of depression and anger. Seemingly nowhere a being was thinking. Unbelievable. He holds back the beast, and this is how they treat him. The Yondaime's legacy, no less. I've had enough. I've stood idly by and let all this happen, no more. I'm taking matters into my own hands, the being thought. Suddenly, a human-sized golden tornado appeared on a nearby hill before it finally dissipated, revealing a gorgeous woman with platinum blonde hair that reached to her shoulders, wearing a forest green kimono and wooden clogs. She had bright blue eyes and she didn't look very happy. It's time to show what Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is capable of, she said in an almost angelic feminine voice before slowly fading from existence. Later at the Sandame's office. And that's when you showed up, Oji-san. Naruto finally finished his explanation. The Sandame sighed. This cost lives, money, and homes. The civilian council will be calling for his execution. Well, Naruto-kun, I'm not sure what to do at this moment. I'll do my best to find you a new home and quell the council. The aged Hokage said. Once again Naruto was left out on the streets. He knew the villagers needed to vent some frustration and grief out on Naruto, but they would always physically hurt him, and this was continuing for 11 years. This was going way too far. How long could these people hold a grudge? Each time Naruto got injured or insulted, he could see a little bit of him die. Sarutobi was fearing for his sanity, and it seemed he shut himself off from the rest of the world aside from a few others. He no longer would spew about how he would become Hokage to gain recognition and acceptance. Naruto frowned. "I guess it's okay, Oji-san," was all he could really say. He had nowhere to live. If he slept outside, then he would be an open target to all the idiots. Meanwhile, the Sandame was searching for something in his desk. "I think yes, here it is." He pulled out a small scroll with the kanji for key on it. "There is an old home on the outskirts of the village. Here is the key." Hiruzen explained, opening it while making a few hand signs before slamming his palm on the seal. A small cloud appeared before disappearing, revealing a traditional key. "Here, take this and put in the lock at the front of the building." Naruto nodded and grabbed the key before putting it in his pocket. "Thanks, Oji-san," Naruto said before leaving the room, but as he was about to close the door, he said something that sent a chill up the professor's spine. "I still don't understand why you would sacrifice your life for these monsters," he said as he calmly closed the door. The Hokage had a shocked look on his face before he sat back in his chair and sighed. "Minato, I hope you can forgive me." At the old home, Naruto soon reached the home, and it was fairly impressive. There was a large wooden fence nearly 4 stories tall surrounding the building, with an arched gate at the front with the design of 2 tigers in a lunging position facing symmetrical to each other. Naruto headed to the front and pulled out the key and slid it into the keyhole and then turned it. To his shock, the key disintegrated in his hands. Before Naruto could utter a word, the gate creaked open to reveal 3 pagodas in one row. The one in the middle was 4 stories while the other 2 were 3 stories tall. They all had designs of tigers on the dark orange roofs and outer walls. There were tall trees around them, as if someone had placed these structures right in the middle of the forest. "Man, Oji-san couldn't have given me this right away. It's a safe distance away from the village," he said, odd but somewhat pissed. He was so caught up in his new home that he never noticed the figure approaching him. "He should have, since it's your birthright," a female voice said, startling poor Naruto. He turned around to see a young, rather attractive woman with blonde hair in a green kimono wearing wooden clogs. She didn't seem to be a threat, so he merely grinned and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry, didn't see you there. Who are you anyway?" The woman merely giggled before saying, "Just call me Kasumi, I'll explain everything inside," she said before heading down the cobblestone path toward the main building. Naruto nodded and followed her. Moments later, Kasumi and Naruto were now sitting on a couch in what seemed to be the living room. There was a window to their left and a rather large wood dining table with 8 chairs. The couch they were sitting on was a black leather couch with a small coffee table in front. Beyond that was some strange big black rectangle hanging on the wall. The room itself had basic light blue drywall and dark brown wood flooring. After taking a good look around, Naruto finally turned to Kasumi. "So you were saying this is my birthright?" Kasumi nodded. "Yes, this is your parents' old home." Naruto's eyes widened. "This is the Namikaze Estates." Now Kasumi widened her eyes. "You knew who they were?" Kasumi questioned. Naruto gave a brief nod before saying, "Yeah, the Kyuubi told me about my parents and obviously why I was, well, still hated." Kasumi was shocked greatly at hearing this. How can you?" she began, but Naruto raised his hand dismissively. "Let me explain," he began. Naruto just stared at Kasumi with a raised eyebrow. "Not to be ungrateful, but what do you actually know about being a shinobi?" Kasumi merely smirked. "You have a point, so how about I give you this as sign of faith?" she said before she jabbed her middle and index fingers into his forehead. Naruto flinched and shut his eyes as immense pain shot through his head, and just as it occurred, it ended. He gasped at the sudden action before glaring at her who had an innocent look on her face. First, could you please warn me next time, and what did you do? Kasumi tilted her head and said. You're just full of questions, aren't you? Well, I gave you enhanced senses as well as the knowledge of the Kage Bunshin Jutsu implanted into your memory, and as for warnings, your head is going to hurt like hell in a few seconds. Naruto was about to say something, but he had no choice but to grasp his nose and one of his ears as his new senses were getting a major overload. Kasumi's sweat dropped as he fell off the couch and hit his head on the table, grunting in pain. I'll be right back, she said reassuringly as she calmly got up and got a few cotton balls from the bathroom and stuffed one in each ear and nostril. Finally calming down, he rose from the floor and sat back at his original position on the couch. You know, you never told me who you were, Naruto stated, feeling his curiosity growing with each passing moment. Kasumi sighed. It's complicated. I'm the spirit of Konoha itself, and I've seen the way those mean people treat you, she said angrily, as those bakas had no right to even be in her home she so selflessly offered to refugees. Things sure have changed since the Shadaime. And frankly, I myself am, though, with what's been going on, so I'm putting my foot down. She then put a finger to her chin. I guess that's not too complicated. Naruto's sweat dropped but got a serious expression. Look, I'm eternally grateful for your offer, but I'm not sure I'm willing to accept it. I hate when people look down on me and see me as beneath them. Kasumi shook her head. No, I'm not doing this out of pity. You've endured so much and yet you still pull through to the end because you don't care what those strangers think. You only fight for you and your friends and do what's right. You've definitely earned my respect. Naruto was stunned. No one ever praised him like that. Not even the old man. He never really though about his lifestyle. He just wanted to survive in this world, and doing what he did seemed to come natural to him. He did his best to hide behind his mask of idiocy to fool others, but now, maybe he should embrace his true self and show others what he's made of. Very well then, I'll take up your offer. So what's this about training? Kasumi grinned devilishly that made him a little uneasy. 1 week before the start of the new academy year. In Naruto's opinion, these past few months have majorly sucked. The first day alone had him apply nearly 100 pounds of weights to each limb and have him running around the entire village for hours while he couldn't be detected by anyone, and if he was, then Kasumi would launch an A-ranked Kaden jutsu toward him. The fact that he was wearing his jumpsuit and Kasumi splashed on a lot of cheap cologne on him to draw others to his presence wasn't helping. This was to teach him evasion, endurance, and give him a wake-up call about his sense of fashion. He also had to tree climb while balancing a kunai on his nose, in midair, to strengthen his Suki chakra control. Once he completed that, he moved to sparring on water with weights applied, and Kasumi didn't seem to know the meaning of holding back. While he was looking forward to all the cool jutsus he was going to learn, he was disappointed at the fact that Kasumi only taught him 2 of the 3 academy jutsus, a low-level genjutsu, a simple style of tai and kenjutsu, as well as a few kaden and fuden jutsus. When questioned, she said that this was to teach him to master each and everything she taught. Instead of being decent at a lot of stuff, he could master and effectively utilize everything he knew. She also didn't want him to be too overpowered at such a young age. She didn't want another Itachi on her hands. Even after all that, Naruto was determined to become stronger and never complained. Each time he fell, he got back up and tried again. Once the months passed, the reward greatly outnumbered the sacrifices. His speed, power, and agility increased greatly. He memorized each just you and generated and controlled enough chakra to either not use hand signs or call out the name in order to catch the opponent off guard. His form for his style Tiger Claw was flawless, but he still needed to work on his kenjutsu. The Kage Bunshin was extremely useful as it would generate an exact clone of himself, and anything the clone learned, Naruto learned as the information would be transferred back to him. With Kyuubi's chakra, he could generate hundreds of clones at a time and increased his learning rate exponentially. His physical appearance changed as well. He grew much taller and let his hair grow out like the Yondaime's, and most of his baby fat was gone. His new attire consisted of black shirt that showed off his muscles and a jet black trench coat with a red spiral on the front of the shirt and a ferocious orange tiger on the back of the coat. He also wore dark green Anbu-style pants and black open-toe ninja sandals. He actually looked more like a 15 or 16-year-old than a 12-year-old. Kasumi and Kyubi told him he was going to be a lady killer when the training was over, much to his embarrassment. Naruto learned that the Namikaze symbol was the tiger for being a solitude creature aside from their family, which did explain Naruto's natural behavior and the estate location. The right pagoda was meant for training with a large dojo at the bottom, while the other two stories held a jutsu library and a storage for weapons which the Uzumaki excelled at, but Kasumi said that they were off limits until he moved up in the ranks. This taught him discipline since he would need it with the whole him not being a genin. We now see Kasumi enter the family dojo and walk up to Naruto, who is currently sparring with a clone. When she approaches him, he drops his stance and dispels the clone. "You've done a great job, Naruto, in my training. You've far exceeded my expectations, and it's safe to say you are definitely ready for a simple academy exam." Naruto blushed at the praise. "Thanks, Nei-chan, I'm about done sparring, so I'm gonna head into town to get something to eat and see if I can get Gigi to enroll me next year," he said, as he only went to the village once in the past few months to stock up on supplies, and with Kasumi's non-stop training, he decided it would be best to make sure his friends were sure he wasn't dead. Kasumi nodded as Naruto vanished in Leaf Shunshin. Moments later, Naruto reappeared just outside of Ichiraku's. Just seeing the shack made his stomach growl. Naruto walked inside and turned to his old stool when he noticed there was picture of him on the stool. It was the first time he ever went to Ichiraku's. He was about 5 at the time, and he was standing next to a man with silver gravity-defying hair and a mask that covered the lower part of his face in an Anbu uniform in front of the shack. Naruto had his mask on and was giving the victory sign with both hands. The man was merely smiling at the display. Naruto gave a frustrated sign. "Great. They think I'm..." Naruto was interrupted when she saw a woman in an apron and hat walk up to him. She had fair skin with light brown eyes and hair that reached down to her back. She was scribbling something on a notepad and didn't see Naruto. "Welcome to Ichiraku, how may I help you?" she said with a solemn look on her face. It looked like she didn't want to be here. Naruto grinned. "Why so glum, Ayame Nei-chan?" Ayame looked up to retort, but her eyes widened when she saw him. She dropped the notepad and stuttered out, "NNN Naruto." Naruto's grin never let up. The one and only. He would have said more had he not been glomped in a bear hug that constricted his breathing. "Naruto, I thought you were dead," she cried with tears in her eyes. "NN Nei-chan," he managed to say as he was currently blue. Ayane saw his struggling figure and let go of him. She rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Sorry, but I really thought you were dead. Speaking of which," she trailed off as she grabbed a frying pan and smacked him over the head, hard. Naruto clutched the growing bump on his head as she began her rant. "Well, there hell were you. I haven't seen you in months, you jackass." Ayane never cursed or got this angry, but with Naruto not showing up and causing her and her dad to go into near depression kind of pissed her off. "Sorry, Nei-chan, let me explain," he began as he explained about him meeting Kasumi and the non-stop training he had to endure along with his loner lifestyle. He of course didn't tell her about his heritage should someone be listening, and Kasumi being the spirit of Konoha, which caused Ayame to grow suspicious in case she just wasn't trying to kill him. "It did happen before. Alright, I forgive you, but don't scare me like that again or I'll ban you from the shack." Naruto's eyes almost bugged out of his head before he got on his knees and grasped her leg with anime-style tears. No, I'll be good, Nei-chan, I promise." Naruto may have been highly disciplined, but it was tough breaking his ramen addiction. He would now eat only it 3 times a week, but not having the food of the gods made by the best chefs in the whole world, ever. That. Ayane's sweat dropped at his pathetic form. Even if you threatened to kill him, Naruto would never beg for mercy, but bringing ramen into the equation is a different story. Ayane thought as she managed to shake him off her leg before grabbing the notepad off the floor and smiled. If you're though groveling, what would like? On the house. Naruto regained his composure and sat on his old stool. Later, patting his now full stomach, Naruto decided to take a walk around the village while ignoring the looks of curiosity, surprise, and the ever so tiresome hatred. Sigh, you know kid, I understand that you don't want to leave this village, but why don't you just kill one of these bakas to set an example? Kyuubi questioned in his head. If it was him who had to endure all the bullshit, he would tear this place a new asshole years ago. Naruto mentally shook his head. Look Kyuubi, as enticing as that sounds, I need to play it cool for the next few years until I become strong enough. Besides, I don't want the younger generation to have an actual reason to hate me. Naruto thought actual in a somewhat sarcastic manner, as their parents have already planted the seed of hate and told their kids to stay away from him. No one really did follow the Sandame's law. While he was having his internal conversation, Naruto accidentally bumped into a certain brooding emo. Hey loser, watch where you're going. The emo said as he glared at him, but had no choice but to look up. Naruto just walked past him. He really didn't want to deal with him. But as soon as he turned his back on him, the kid grabbed his shoulder to face him. Aren't you gonna apologize to me? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and walked away. Dobi, answer me, he said as he tried to punch Naruto, but he merely turned around and swatted it away. Piss off. I have places to be and I don't wanna deal with your high and mighty attitude. Said Duck snarled. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm an Uchiha, the elite, he said as he pulled out a kunai and charged at him. Naruto sighed and dodged the attack and spun around and chopped his neck, effectively knocking him out. Idiot's not even a genin and he's already starting to pick fights. Naruto said to himself as he merely continued his stroll, seeing as he was starting to draw a crowd. Unfortunately, he was nearing the dango shop and saw a woman that was about to enter catch his eye. Whistle, hello nurse. Kyuubi cat called inside his head. Naruto had no choice but to agree with him. Anko Midirashi, former apprentice of Orochimaru and second in command of the torture and interrogation department. She was a relatively tall woman with violet spiky hair tied into a ponytail and light brown pupil-less eyes. She was wearing a tan trench coat that reached her thighs and a fishnet shirt that was quite revealing, as well as a dark orange mini skirt that stopped just at her knees and shin guards. She had fairly impressive bust and a nice set of legs. That made me feel like such a perv. She also seemed to notice him as well. Damn, the Kyuubi kid has become quite the looker, she thought while basically molesting him with her eyes. Deciding not to be rude, she walked up to him. Hey Gaki, I'm glad you finally got a sense of fashion. Did you do that? She pointed at the currently downed Uchiha as well as multiple glaring at him and the snake bitch. Thanks, and yeah, the idiot got on my nerves. Do you wanna get something to eat? My treat? Naruto asked. He already ate for free, so he should have plenty of money for whatever she ordered, right? Right. Anko got a sly smile. Are you asking me out on a date? She questioned. Naruto just gave her his own smile and shrugged. If you want it to be. Alright then, but I can already tell you're going to regret this, she said with a smile that made Naruto unsure if he should be terrified or aroused. Later, Anko was having a great day. She managed to crack a tough enemy ninja this morning, and now she had all the free dango she could eat thanks to a certain hot blonde. While Naruto, not so much, as he was now carrying a very skinny Gamma wallet. Thanked Kami for the Namikaze bank accounts. Anko gave a satisfied sigh. Ah, that was good, I'll see around, she said as she walked away. Naruto just hung his shoulders at the "You're welcome," he said to himself. He calmed down and saw that it was getting late and decided to head to Hokage Tower for one last stop. Not wanting to deal with the bitch secretary, he just shunshined to his destination. At the Hokage's office, Sarutobi was now dealing with his most heated enemy, paperwork. He swore he knew why Minato was so adamant in sacrificing his life for the village. To get away from this accursed monstrosity, he needed a distraction now. As if on cue, he saw what looked like a teenage version of his surrogate grandson. "Yo Oji-san." He waved. "Naruto," was all he could say at seeing his much more matured body. "That's me, and just call it a growth spurt," he said, seeing his curious expression towards his appearance. "Anyway, I'm here to enlist for my final try at the academy." Sarutobi sighed. "Very well then, but this is your last chance before stuck being a civilian." "Don't worry, I'm confident I'll do better." Sarutobi nodded and pulled out a form and pen. "Just sign here and you can be on your way." Naruto grabbed the pen and signed before disappearing once again. Naruto was currently standing just outside the academy gates with a grin on his face. It was time to show what the real Naruto can do. As he walked through the halls, he still got the glares and looks of curiosity as well as a blush or two at his new appearance, but he ignored them all. He finally reached his old classroom and opened the door to see that only Sasuke, Shikamaru, Shino, Hinata, and the two instructors from last year were here. Sasuke was glaring daggers at him since he got his kicked a week ago. Shino and Shikamaru didn't seem to notice him, as one was staring off into space and the other was asleep. And of course Hinata was blushing up a storm at the new and improved Naruto. "Is that Naruto-kun?" she thought. Meanwhile, one of the instructors finally realized he was here. His eyes widened as he saw how much he had changed. "Naruto?" the scarred man questioned at his surrogate brother. Naruto just smiled and waved. "Hey Iruka-sensei, just call it a growth spurt." Iruka sighed and went back to the papers in front of him. He should have known to expect the unexpected from someone like Naruto. Naruto glanced around and decided to take a seat next to Hinata. "Hey Hinata-chan, is it okay if I sit here?" No, it's okay Naruto-kun," she stuttered while inwardly squealing at the fact he called her Chan. Naruto nodded and sat next to her and decided to make a little small talk, seeing as there wasn't anything else to do. Slowly the seats started to fill out as each student entered, as Naruto amused Hinata with his old pranking stories. "And then I pulled the string and," Naruto said as he was cut off by one pink hair and one blonde fangirl trying to get through the doorway at the same time. They both finally made it through while both yelled, "I win. I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun." Naruto groaned at Sakura and Ino's antics. He couldn't believe he had a crush on one of them. He really need to thank Kasumi for all she has done for him. He returned his attention back to Hinata, although he couldn't seem to get a word over the constant screeching. Finally having enough, he called out, "You know there are 2 seats next to your precious Sasuke-kun." Ino and Sakura both blinked and looked at the seats. They both gave a squeal of delight before sprinting to their seats and bugged the emo with their constant chatter, much to his displeasure. Iruka finally stood up and spoke. "Now that you are all here, I would like to welcome you all back to Academy. We'll start off today by having target practice and sparring outside, followed by a lesson back here," he said as he picked up his clipboard and left the classroom. All the students got up and followed him. Outside the academy moments later. "All right, everybody line up. We'll start off with boys then girls," Iruka said as he walked off to the side as the other instructors set up the targets about 25 yards away. First up is Choji Akamichi. Choju walked forward as his students got in 2 separate lines. Another instructor, Mizuki, handed the chubby kid the weapons and said, "You'll each be given 10 kunais and 10 shuriken." The Akamichi nodded and grabbed the weapons and aimed one at the target. Meanwhile, Naruto shook his head at the abundance the instructors were giving the students. When he was training with Kasumi, he was only given 1 kunai and 2 shuriken a day to practice, since he might not always have an infinite number of weapons. This taught him to make every throw count, since he could easily take down an enemy with a well-aimed strike while others would just use them as a distraction to prepare a jutsu. What a waste. He spent so much time contemplating this he missed nearly all the students. Sasuke Uchiha. Iruka called out as all the Sasuke fan club, ANSFC from now on, cheered him on. He managed to get 18 bullseyes and smirked. He walked away as the SFC still wouldn't shut the up about how great he was. He approached Naruto. Beat that doby. He taunted. Naruto rolled his eyes and walked up to take the weapons. He took a look at what he was given and saw that they were all slightly bent. His senses picked up trace amounts of rust and paint. Naruto narrowed his eyes. These were old rusted kunai painted to look brand new, they probably couldn't pierce cardboard. He looked over and saw Mizuki smirk, thinking he sabotaged the demon. Naruto closed his eyes and within a time span of about 5 seconds, flung them all at the target with each getting a bullseye. The crowd was silent, stunned at Naruto's impressive display of skills. After a few moments Hinata, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Shino started clapping, while the SFC yelled at him, saying he somehow cheated while Sasuke sneered at him. Naruto smiled at the former and walked back into the line as everyone else was still stunned. Oh well, it's the girl's turn. Iruka said. Naruto saw that every girl who wasn't in the SFC did a great job, including Hinata after a brief pep talk courtesy him. While the SFC was downright pitiful as not one made a bullseye and barely hit the target at all. Iruka then announced it was time for sparring. Naruto was actually amused at the matches as Shikamaru forfeited, saying it was too troublesome. Choji went completely nutshit when his opponent called him fat and may have gotten sent to the hospital, and Hinata took out Sakura in a few seconds with a quick neck strike. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Naruto Uzumaki, Iruka announced. The SFC cheered the brooder on and yelled put downs at Naruto. When both competitors reached the ring, Iruka called out, "Are you both ready?" They both nodded. And, Hajime. Sasuke got into the basic academy stance while Naruto put his left leg in front of the right and extended his arms out with his hands formed into claws while leaning forward, think mantis style but with hands into claws. Sasuke charged at Naruto with his right fist drawn and tried to punch Naruto, but he leaned to the left and struck him in the ribs. Sasuke grunted and stumbled backwards. Is that the best you've got? He taunted, trying to get him to lose focus. Naruto said nothing but thought. No, if it was the best you would be on the ground coughing up blood. Naruto lunged forward while spinning around and tried to deliver a back fist, but the emo caught it and tried to counter, but Naruto was too quick and did a quick snap kick to his knee, knocking him off balance. Leaving no time to react, Naruto lifted his leg and did an axe kick right on the Uchiha's chest so hard a little blood came out of his mouth. Seeing this, Iruka decided to call off the match before it got out of hand. Alright, that's enough. Naruto is victorious. Just like the target practice, Naruto's friends cheered, SFC jeered, and everyone else just stood there in amazed silence. Sasuke, the stubborn bastard got up and went through a series of hand seals. Kaden. Fireball jutsu. He cried as put his fingers to his lips and blew a stream of fire at him. Iruka was about to stop him but was shocked when Naruto jumped over the attack with his fist raised and sent it smashing right in the spoiled runt's forehead, knocking him out. Now everyone was silent. Naruto looked around. I think you should take him to the hospital to make sure he's okay. Snapping out of his stupor, Iruka picked up Sasuke. I guess class is dismissed, he said as he shunshined to the hospital to get checked out. Meanwhile, Naruto's friends walked over to him. Congratulations on putting the asshole in his place, Kiba said. I'm glad YROKNN Naruto-kun. Hinata stuttered. I had no idea you were so skilled, Naruto-san. Shino said. Thanks, I went through some serious training these past few months and it definitely paid off, Naruto said as he felt killer intent directed at him. He turned around to see the SFC glaring at him while they cracked their knuckles. It seems they were going to avenge their almighty Sasuke-kun. Naruto shook off the ki and looked back at the others. Well, it looks like I'd better get going, but before I do, Do you want get some Ichirakus with me Hinata-chan tonight? Hinata turned a deep shade of red at hearing that. Oh, you mean like a DDD date? Sure. So how about it? Hinata nodded furiously before Naruto disappeared in Shunshin. As soon as he left, Hinata fainted with a huge smile on her face while muttering Naruto's name. The rest of the gang sweat dropped at the display. We really need to work on that, Kiba said as Shino and Shikamaru nodded. Troublesome blonde. The Nara muttered. Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Kurenai Yuhi, Kakashi Hatake, and Asuma Sarutobi all stood in silence at what they just witnessed. Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last, just beat the Uchiha in a spar and jumped over a Kaden Jutsu before knocking him out. As to why they were all here, this was their first year being Jonin senseis, and the Hokage would let them view the first and last day of the graduating academy to scope out the potential candidates. While Kurenai was very disappointed in how most of the girls acted towards the Uchiha, she was impressed at Naruto's ability to boost Hinata's confidence with his little pep talk. Kakashi was mentally groaning. The council demanded that the Uchiha be put on his team due to his Sharingan, and seeing he displayed unsportsmanlike acts, it was going to be tough. And Sakura, mother, is already bitching on how she should be put on Sasuke's team for Kami knows what reason except trying to seduce him. He hoped that he got Naruto. While Asuma was still set on training the Inoshika Cho team, he had to give his props to the Uzumaki. Clearing his throat, Sarutobi spoke up. Well, now that you've seen the candidates, who would you like to take as students? Asuma stepped forward. I request Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi. They will prove an excellent capturing and interrogation squad with their clan-based techniques. Sarutobi nodded. Very well then. Azuum stepped back as Kurenai stepped forward. I request Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki. Shino and Hinata will prove to be great trackers, while Naruto shows leadership qualities and could help Hinata with her confidence, seeing as she has a crush on him. Sarutobi nodded as she stepped back and Kakashi approached. While very reluctantly, I request Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki. Sasuke, despite his superiority complex, can provide attacks with his clan's jutsu, and Sakura, with her academics, can help in setting traps and battle strategies. Naruto seems to have improved immensely, and with his vast chakra reserves can make them a perfect assault squad. Sarutobi nodded once again. Konoha law states that if a sensei wants the same individual, they have to debate while the Hokage makes the final decision before the day of graduation. Well, it seems you two both want the Uzumaki, so I'll let you debate. Kurenai and Kakashi turned to each other. Naruto would be key for an assault squad and maybe set up a rivalry with Sasuke to humble him and push each other to greater heights. Kurenai shook her head. I have to disagree. Sasuke is too arrogant to see anyone else as other than beneath him, and Sakura will just blindly follow him and never work together. It's all about teamwork, and it seems my requests are becoming friends. However, I may be able to reach them and snap Sasuke and Sakura out of their funk with Naruto's people skills. Besides, Kiba Inuzuka would be a better choice with his enhanced sense of smell. Seeing this as was going nowhere, Sarutobi interrupted them. While you both make valid points, I'll keep an eye on how everyone interacts with each other to see which would be best. You're all dismissed. The three nodded and shunshined to their next destination. Sarutobi sat back in his chair and gave an exasperated sigh. If Naruto doesn't show he can be a key component in a tracking team, I may have no choice but to put him on Kakashi's team. Omake, are you both ready? They nodded. And, Hajime. Before they could get into their fighting stances, dark clouds formed above, covering the whole sky. Before anyone could question the sudden change of weather, a thunderbolt struck Iruka. Ahhhhhhhhh, he cried before he fell down in a crumpled crisp heat. Get your own damn line. My demonic voice bellowed. SSS, sorry Watchdude-sama. Damn straight, I said. Everyone merely sweat dropped at the divine smackdown. Naruto reappeared right in front of the Namikaze gates to get prepared for his date. He really did like Hinata. She was a nice girl and was the only student at the academy who didn't make fun of him and vice versa. He owed Kasumi so much. Not only did she teach him how to fight, but she also gave him social advice as well as the ahem, birds and bees talk that ended with him on the ground with blood coming out of his nose. Apparently, Kasumi decided to use Ika Ika as reference, and when she teased him, asking if he wanted to do a demonstration with her, it was too much for him. Naruto bit his thumb and did a few hand signs before slamming his palm on the gate, causing the Uzumaki symbol to appear and glow for a brief period of time before it dissipated. The gates creaked open and Naruto walked in. Looking around, he cried out, "Yo Ne-chan." As soon as he finished, Kasumi appeared in a golden tornado. "What is it, Naruto?" she asked, a little surprised at his early arrival but didn't dwell on it. "I came by to ask if we're going to have any training today. I've got a date." Kasumi grinned. "Let me guess, the Hyuga who always blushes and faints whenever you're around," she said as she remembered how ignorant the blonde was to her feelings despite how smart he was. Naruto smiled and nodded. "Well, I was planning on teaching you something new, but I suppose I can put it off for tomorrow provided you get to second base with her." Naruto's eyes bugged almost completely out of his head with a tomato red blush. "What?" Kasumi giggled and waved him off. "Haha, I'm just screwing with you. Just tell me how it goes." Naruto calmed down and went in to get changed before she made him have a heart attack. He showered, changed into a new pair of his outfit and decided to take a walk around the village to pass time. Meanwhile, at the Hyuga compound, Hinata was currently brushing her hair for her first date. She couldn't believe Naruto just asked her out of the blue like that. It was like a dream come true. She was still wearing her same outfit, just a different pair, as she was still insecure about her figure. After she decided everything was perfect, she exited her room and walked through the halls to reach the exit of the compound. Unfortunately, she ran into someone she prayed she wouldn't. Her father. "Where do you think you're going? It's getting late," he said with a monotone voice. Scared by the look she was receiving, she answered, "Date." Hinata quickly covered her mouth, but it was too late. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed. "With whom?" Realizing she was busted, she sighed and said, "En Naruto-kun." Hiyashi closed his eyes before opening them again, but they were softer. "Very well then, be back by 9. He said as he walked past her. She blinked. He wasn't mad. Deciding not to push her luck, he quickened her pace and headed for the exit. Meanwhile, Hiyashi was both frustrated and happy. Happy because he knew full well Naruto would be good for her should they start a relationship. And frustrated because if they did start a relationship, then the Hyuga Council might do something drastic if they knew the heiress was seeing the demon brat. Hiyashi was so disappointed with himself. When his wife died, Hinata said she wanted to be strong like him and gentle like her. Hiyashi thought it would be best if he upped her training regiment. When she wasn't making too much progress, he thought if he belittled her, then she might feel determined to try again. It worked when he was a child. But alas, it just slowly destroyed her confidence. By the time he realized what he was doing was wrong, the damage was already done and Hinata became a nervous wreck. She was terrified of him. It frightened him to think what would have happened to her if the Uzumaki didn't come along. He remembered the day when he was so harsh to her she actually ran out of the dojo crying. Hiyashi followed her to make sure she didn't get hurt, and after a bit of searching he found her sobbing underneath a tree. He was about to walk up to her, but he saw the Uzumaki approach her and asked her what was wrong. When she told him, Naruto got angry, saying that he was a jerk and she should never give up no matter what. Hinata brightened up considerably after his little talk and actually hugged him before heading back to the compound. After that, Hinata still didn't improve greatly, but she became much more determined every time he saw her train. Right now he needed to make sure the council members didn't find out about their little meeting. He was a father and it was about damn time he started acting like one. At Ichiraku's Hinata was currently standing outside the ramen shack with a concerned expression across her pale features. It was sunset and Naruto still wasn't here. What if he stood her up? What if he was just playing some sick joke on her? She began to tear up but heard a voice behind her. She turned around and was delighted to see Naruto with his same attire minus the coat jogging towards. He waved at her. Hey. Sorry Hinata-chan, I lost track of time, he said as he finally reached her. Naruto gestured to the stand. Shall we? He said in a mock polite manner that made Hinata giggle. It was like music to his ears. Hinata nodded and went in and took seat next to him. Taiki walked in from the kitchen. A few days ago Naruto showed himself to him and after another tearful reunion, a smack to the head with a frying pan, a threat, and begging, he and Naruto quickly made up and were back on old terms. Hello Naruto, what would you like? I'll have 2 medium miso and a. The old cook nodded and turned to Hinata. And for you girlfriend? He teased. They both blushed before she answered. I'll have a small shrimp and water. He nodded once again and went back into the kitchen. So how have things been going, you old man still giving your trouble? Naruto asked. To his surprise she smiled and shook her head. And no, father is becoming much nicer. I even told him about our DD date and he was okay with it. That's great. After a small conversation Ayame finally brought them their food. They ate in comfortable silence with Naruto actually showing good manners. Once they finished Naruto paid in full and they talked for just a while longer before they were interrupted by a certain pink-haired bitch. Naruto baka. Get you out here now. She demanded. Reluctantly they both exited the shack to find her and a few members of the SFC behind her. What do you want Haruno? Naruto asked with a bored expression. You know damn what I want. I want you to apologize to Sasuke-kun and let me kick you, she commanded. The SFC cheered in agreement. Naruto put a finger to his chin in mock thought. Let me know. That got what was coming to him and you really think any of you can so much as lay a hand on me? Please, you got lucky and you're not going to do anything because I'm your Sakura-chan. Naruto crossed his arms and sighed. To answer that in no particular order, not anymore and do you want to see just how lucky I am? He questioned while releasing a little bit of ki. Although she was scared, Sakura still kept up her rant. You're just jealous that Sasuke-kun is better than you at everything and he has my attention. You're just a baka. A clan-less nobody made by some drunk father and a whore of a mother. My mother was right you're a Sakura was cut off by fist crashing with her cheek with so much force she lost a few teeth and blood while she was sent flying. She finally tumbled down the road before coming to a stop with her face first on the ground and the rest of her body up in the air. How Sakura punched Naruto in the first Shippuden episode. The SFC looked at the display in horror before they looked at the person who struck her and were beyond shocked when they saw it was Hinata. She was currently standing just where Sakura used to be with her fist extended and pissed off expression on her face. She finally had enough with her constantly putting down her crush. The SFC ran away in terror calling her a freak, despite they were all in the ninja academy. Naruto just stared at Hinata. Hinata. She looked at him. Her brain finally processed what she has just done. Eep. She squeaked before fainting. Shaking his head he summoned a clone to drop her off. The clone picked her up bridal style and shunshin to the Hyuga compound. Naruto just said nothing and just went home while Kyuubi was currently laughing up a storm. Ha 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 tt that was the funniest shit I've ever seen ha. For once Naruto didn't retort but just continued his way home. Still stunned at what just occurred. The next day, Naruto was currently doing a few katas in the dojo. He had just sent a shadow clone to go to the academy for him. It would take the class, dispel, and give him all the info. Genius. Kasumi appeared in her usual tornado off to the side. When Naruto saw her he stopped the katas and saw her approach him. You seem to be doing quite well these past few months, so I've decided to give you a reward, she said as she pulled out a scroll. Naruto's eyes widened at the title. Rasengan, he muttered. Rasengan, one of the Yondaime's prized jutsus. Naruto glanced at Kasumi. Are you sure I can handle this? He asked. This was an extremely lethal jutsu, and if it got into the wrong hands like that Uchiha, he didn't want to think about it. Of course. I know you're responsible enough not to abuse this, and like I said, it's a reward for all the training I've put you through. Naruto nodded and exited the dojo before heading into the woods until he reached a clearing Naruto used for outdoor training. On the far left of the clearing there was 6-story waterfall and pond, perfect for water walking and suiton jutsus. Directly in front of him there was a small mountain for Doden as well as surface climbing and target practice, and of course a large plain for Kaden and Futen. Naruto finally reached the center of the clearing. It seems Minato thought ahead as he saw a small blood seal on the scroll. Naruto bit his thumb and smeared the blood on the seal before it unraveled and did a small poof, revealing a water and rubber balloon. He looked at the contents on the scroll which said, Step 1. First, you need to take the water balloon and pop it with chakra alone. Not very descriptive, but it will do. I should probably get the actual steps down by myself before using Kage Bunshin's. Naruto thought. He remembered Kasumi told him that while Kage Bunshin's can greatly increase the effectiveness of training, if you were learning a completely alien technique the clone wouldn't understand how to it because it only has a small fraction of brain power of its creator. The clone only had motor skills and the ability to speak, meaning it was meant for practicing, not learning. Naruto walked to the pond and filled the balloon up with water before putting it in the palm of his hand. He then began to manipulate his chakra to get the water to move in order to break the surface. After nearly 2 hours Naruto wasn't making much progress, the water would just keep swishing around no matter how fast it would go. He tried one direction, then the other and still got the same reaction. I don't get. No matter how much chakra I use to push the water it just keeps swishing around. I've tried both directions and... Wait. Both directions, Naruto pondered. He started to manipulate his chakra once more but this time gave off an even amount in both directions. The result were not disappointing, the balloon began to shift around a bit. He concentrated his chakra a little more before bumps started forming. Pushing a little more the balloon finally popped, splashing water all over him. He smirked and was about to begin the next step when his eyes glazed over as he received all clones' memories at the academy. Significant Memory 1. The clone of Naruto was currently heading down the hallways to begin his boring day of learning things he already knew. To make matters worse the Baka Uchiha was walking towards him. Fight me, he commanded. The clone smirked at hearing that. We already did and I was able to take you out with 4 blows, remember? Sasuke growled. I mean a real fight, not a stupid spar. The only reason you won is because you got lucky and I couldn't use any of my lethal jutsus. The clone an eyebrow and said in a sarcastic manner. Wow, so that C-class jutsu wasn't lethal. Now Sasuke smirked. Of course I'm the elite and once I get my Sharingan. Blah, 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 Sharingan this, Sharingan that. Listen, I don't know why I'm suddenly the object of your infatuation but I really don't give a shit. Go fall in a ditch. He interrupted as he walked past him. The brat glared holes in his head. I will take you down, loser. You, Itachi, and that little of yours, he thought. Significant Memory 2. The clone of Naruto was ignoring Iruka's lecture of the Battle of the Shadaime and Madara Uchiha. Since when will knowing this shit help you kill somebody? He tried to look at Hinata but every time he would do that she would avert her eyes away from him. He frowned at that, though it was fairly amusing that the Haruno would cast a nervous glance at her every now and again. Someone might have finally got put in her place. Yeah, right. Once the lecture was over it was time for lunch and the clone decided it would be best to see what was wrong with Hinata. He looked around the schoolyard for a few moments and saw her under a tree on the far left, next to his old swing. As soon as Hinata saw Naruto approaching, she quickly got up and tried to move, but his clone grasped her hand. Hinata-chan, you've been avoiding me all day. What's wrong? Hinata looked away and tried to free herself from his grip but failed. He sighed. Is this about last night at our date? She looked like she was about to cry. You probably think I'm a freak, she muttered. Thinking she freaked him out by beating up Sakura. Naruto's senses managed to catch it. Is that what this is about? Hinata-chan, I don't think you're a freak. I'm proud of you. Her eyes widened as she looked at him. No one has ever stood up for me like that. Besides, you're a ninja and you took out the so-called Kunoichi of the year with one punch. Thank you, Death MVP, for reminding me that just proves you're not the weak little girl everyone thought you were. Hinata had a few tears rolling down her cheeks after that and she hugged him tight. She soon released him as Naruto wiped her tears away. Hey, none of that. Come on, let's get something to eat. Hinata nodded as they headed to Ichiraku's. She nodded as they left the grounds. Shino and Kiba saw the whole display and smiled. End memory transfer. Naruto finally returned to reality as the two memories that stuck out ended. He also saw the clone played a game of shogi and a prank with Shikamaru and Kiba. He always enjoyed his little pastimes them. Hell, it's how they all first met and became friends. The clone also seemed to knock out Iruka with his world-famous jutsu when Hinata and the other girls weren't looking. Well done, Kit. Well done. Kyuubi complimented at seeing how he boosted Hinata's confidence yet again. As well as the much improved version of his jutsu, but he didn't need to know that. Now that that's over, with time for the next stage, he said to himself as he picked up the scroll. Time skip. Graduation exams. It had been months since that day and things were starting to look up. Naruto had mastered the regular Rasengan and could form it with one hand in under 6 seconds. He also invented the Great Ball Rasengan, but he needed a clone to help with the control of chakra needed. He also learned a new style of Kenjutsu which had handles with 3, 1-foot-long blades on each hand, which would add to his tiger claw lethality. Naruto and his friends, especially Shino, were getting closer and Naruto was moving up in the ranks. He didn't show off all of his skills, but he was no longer considered a dobi by his classmates, except Sasuke and Horino of course. He was now about mid-level. Though the best part seemed to be Hinata's confidence has increased dramatically. She no longer stuttered or fainted and seemed to develop a sense of humor while still being the kind girl she always was. She too became closer with Naruto and his friends and were now an official couple. Naruto was currently sitting in the center of the room in between Hinata and Shikamaru. After a few minutes, Iruka and Mizuki walked through the door. Alright class, it's been a wonderful year with all of you and it's time to see who will become genin of the leaf. Iruka said to the students with a smile. We'll start with targets, followed by a taijutsu spar, and we'll come back here for a written test and the ninjutsu portion. Follow me, he ordered. They all followed and were soon standing in 2 separate lines outside. As always, you'll be given 10 kunais and 10 shuriken, the scarred Chunin said as the instructors brought out multiple targets that were in humanoid form. The boys' turns were uneventful till they reached Sasuke. He walked up and grabbed the weapons and aimed them at the target. Before he threw them, Naruto picked up a strange scent in the dummy and smirked. Iruka-sensei, I think you should check the targets one more time. Iruka just gave him a quizzical expression before he nodded and walked up to the dummy. He patted around and felt nothing. Naruto, I don't understand why. Wait a minute, he said as he pulled out a black disc. He picked a kunai from his pouch and held it to the disc. As soon as it got within 6 inches, the weapon leapt from his hand and attached itself to the disc. Iruka narrowed his eyes and glared at the other Chunin present. Mind anyone telling me why there are magnets in this dummy? Some of the Chunin started to sweat. We don't know. One of them stuttered. How the hell did the Kyuubi brat notice it? I hid the disc with a scent-killing drug that even the Inuzuka couldn't detect. One of them thought as he placed them there for the Uchiha so he would get all bull's eyes and receive the best grade. Everyone stared at Naruto, wondering how he was able to detect it. A gift from a friend, he said cryptically, which confused the students and Chunin present. Iruka sighed and tossed all the magnets away and got out of the throwing range. The Uchiha continued and ended up with only 15 bull's eyes. Though he still gave a smug grin and the SFC cheered on. It was now Naruto's turn and once again had 20 bull's eyes with a minor applause from his friends. Meanwhile at the Hall of Hokage Tower. The Hokage and Jonin present were furious, pissed even. Someone tried to cheat Uchiha to the number 1 spot, thanked Kami Naruto noticed it. Sarutobi and Kurenai were smirking, enhanced senses That was all they needed. Well, it seems Naruto has enhanced senses exceeding the Inuzuka as well as close bonds with the Aburame and Hyuga. My decision is final. Should Naruto pass, he will be placed on Team 8, the aged Kage said. Kakashi was about to protest but was shut up by a firm glare. They all heard a small poof behind them all. They all turned to see a kunai with a tag attached to it. Kakashi picked it up and read the tag aloud. Do you want to know what they've been giving me? Sincerely, Naruto. He then noticed the kunai seemed to be freshly painted. The lazy ninja moved his fingernail along the weapon and saw some gray chip off, revealing rusty brown. Narrowing his eyes, he pulled out his own kunai and started chipping away until it showed the entire tool was rusted and slightly bent. The Jonin were even more angry at the fact that the teachers were trying to fail Naruto and stunt his growth as a shinobi. I'm going to do some firing and give Iruka an earful for not noticing it sooner. Everyone nodded in agreement. Back at the academy, after the girls' turn, which ended up with Hinata doing better and the SFC doing actually worse than before, it was time for sparring. Shikamaru forfeiting to Hinata and Sakura and Ino doing a slap fight were the only ones Naruto paid attention to. His mind was on how to improve his Rasengan and taking Hinata on another date. It was finally time for Naruto and Sasuke's turn as they entered the sparring ring. Are you both ready? Nods, weapons allowed and no Judas Sasuke. And, Iruka looked around nervously. Begin. Damn straight, Sasuke chucked a few shurikens at him and pulled out a kunai and charged. Naruto pulled out his own kunai and deflected all the weapons before parrying Sasuke's attack and managed to get a small scratch along the Uchiha's right arm. This continued for about a minute before Naruto tried to do a sweep but Sasuke jumped above it. Naruto surprised everyone by bringing his other foot out and kicked him right in the chest as soon as he jumped. Sasuke back-flipped but was punched right in the jaw as soon as he landed. The Uchiha tried to deliver an elbow to the face but Naruto caught it and used the momentum to trip him. He was unable to get up as the Namikaze placed a kunai at his throat. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka declared proudly. Naruto got off of Sasuke and held out his hand. He merely batted it away while he got up and sneered at him. He shook his head. The students headed back inside for the written portion. Naruto was a little surprised when he received a fair test instead of one meant for the Chunin exams, but to be safe Naruto placed a genjutsu on the paper so it couldn't be tampered with. It was finally time for the ninjutsu part of the exam. Almost everyone passed aside for a few SFC members and the lower-ranking students. Soon it was Naruto's time to shine as he stepped up. Alright Naruto, do a substitution, henge, and at least 3 clones. Our hero nodded. He substituted with Mizuki, much to his annoyance, and hanged into the sandame, getting every single detail down from the wrinkles to the battle armor underneath. Finally Naruto formed a hand sign and made 10 clones. Very good Naruto, you passed. But don't you think that was a little overkill? Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Well, I've got really high chakra reserves and that is the least amount of clones I can do. Almost all the people in the room were stunned at hearing that. Well, no need to worry. Take your headband and you can leave. He nodded once again and did as he was told. Outside the academy, Naruto was standing around chatting with Shikamaru, Hinata, Shino and Kiba. Sweet, we all passed, Kiba said as the rest nodded. Naruto managed to pick up a few words the parents were saying behind his back. Look, he passed. I can't believe they let him become a ninja. Shish, we're not supposed to talk about it. Naruto merely shook off the harsh words and spoke to the people he actually gave a damn about. Come on, let all go out to eat to celebrate, my treat. Alright, but no ramen, Hinata said. Ah, please Hinata-chan, he begged. They all chuckled at his antics. The next day, Academy. Naruto was currently sitting next to Hinata and Kiba as Iruka spoke up, holding a clipboard. Alright, I'm glad to see those who have passed. Remember, being a shinobi means, as usual, Naruto tuned out his lectures until he reached the final 3 teams. Team 7 Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchina, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your sensei is Kakashi Hatake, he announced. Yes. True love conquers all, Sakura shouted as everyone rolled their eyes. Ah damn, Kiba muttered as he slammed his head on the desk. Naruto patted the Inuzuka's back. Tough break, man. Don't worry, I hear the Jonin is strict and won't take crap from them, he said, trying to cheer him up. Kiba said nothing as Akamaru howled in sympathy. Team 8 is Shino Aburame, Hinta Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your sensei will be Kurni Yuhi. The said students all smiled. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so Team 10 is Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi. Your sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Iruka read off the clipboard. The blonde-haired girl slammed her head on the desk similar to Kiba as Choji just munched on some chips and the Nara muttered, "Trueable some." 15 minuets later, the only teams left were Team 7 and 8. The latter of the teams were talking amongst themselves while Sakura was fawning over a brooding Sasuke. Kiba had an utterly defeated look on his face. They all heard the door open and saw a woman with long black, curly hair and red eyes. It was hard to describe her outfit as anything but something wrapped up in bandages along her wrists and arms with a red-sleeved shirt underneath. Team 8, meet me on the roof, was all she said before shunching. The team nodded as Naruto grabbed a hold of Shino and Hinata as he too disappeared in a shunshin, taking them with him. Moments later, on the roof. They were all currently on the roof with the soon-to-be genin sitting next to each other and the sensei opposite of them leaning against the railing. Alright, how about we introduce each other? I'll go first. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. I like genjutsu, shochu, vodka, and takuosa. I dislike cake, perverts, fangirls, and rapists. My only hobby is having evening drinks. My dream is to retire one day and have family. Now the Aburame, she said as she pointed at him. My name is Shino Aburame. I like bugs, wild grass salad, winter melon, Naruto-san, Hinata-san, Kiba-san, and Shikamaru-san. My hobbies include entomology and collecting new specimens for my insect collection. My dream is to become a strong clan head. Kurenai nodded as she pointed to Hinata. My name is Hinata Hyuga. I like Naru-kun, Shino, Shikaramu, Kiba, Zenzai, and cinnamon rolls. I dislike arrogant people and people who brings others down. My only hobby is pressing flowers. My dream is to become head of the Hyuga clan and abolish the caged bird seal. Kurenai couldn't help but smile along with Shino and Naruto. She sure has come a long way. Nice dream. I hope that becomes a reality. And you? She said as she pointed at Naruto. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like Hina-chan, Shino, Kiba, Shikamaru, ramen, red bean soup. I dislike arrogant people, fangirls, people who are prejudiced, and closet perverts. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at the last statement. It's a long story. The three said at the same time. She sighed and let him finish. My hobbies include playing the occasion harmless prank and watering plants. The genjutsu mistress couldn't help but be a little scared at the way he said harmless. In my dream, well, I guess become a strong shinobi. I haven't really thought about that. Well, don't worry too much about that. Meet me at Training Ground 8 tomorrow at 7 o'clock sharp for your genin exam. Kurenai stated. They gave questioned glance at her. So the academy was just to weed out the ones who had no chance at all at becoming ninja? Naruto inquired. She nodded. That's right, and the chances of failing are at least 66%. The three tweens widened their eyes. I recommend you eat a light breakfast. The Yuhi suggested before she shunshined away. Naruto could tell the others were nervous and spoke. Don't worry, we'll do fine, just get some rest and be prepared, he reassured them. They brightened up a little as they all rose and headed off to their homes. Guess the date's postponed, Naruto thought. Naruto reappeared at the grounds to find that no one was there yet. Sighing, he sat down against a tree in the lotus position and closed his eyes to meditate. No more than 2 minuets later, he heard footsteps. Lazily opening one of his eyes, he saw Hinata and Shino approaching him. He rose from his seat and stretched. Hey guys, do you know where? Whoosh! Naruto was cut off by a kunai whizzing towards them. They all managed to dodge it with relative ease as it lodged itself in the nearby tree. They noticed a small tag was attached to the tool. Naruto broke off the tag and unraveled it and read aloud. This exam has 2 parts, the first is to locate me. Once that is done, you must attempt to capture me through a fight. This will prove your abilities in tracking, capturing, and overall reconnaissance. I have an alarm set, and if that is not done by the time it goes off, you will all fail and be sent back to the academy for more training. P.S. Coming at me with the intent to kill as recommended. Kurenai. Naruto saw his soon-to-be teammates stiffen at the severity of the punishment. He sighed and said, We're not going to pass by worrying about the consequences. It's about 7:10, so we should have enough time to devise a plan. They both were a tad bit surprised at his determination. But he was right, they needed to make a plan. Alright, first, we're going to track her down using Hina-chan's Byakugan and my senses. Should she try to escape, Shino here will place a female insect on her to keep track of her movements. Once we do that, we'll encounter her in a fight. She said to use the intent to kill, so that's what we're going to do. Hinata and Shino nodded, which made Naruto smile. He began to sniff the air until he picked up a trace. I can smell perfume, that must be her. I'll be up front with Hina-chan behind me and Shino behind her. Let's go, he ordered as they all took off. Meanwhile, a figure in the bushes smirked. 1 hour later, the members of Team 8 were currently chasing down their future sensei through the edge of the forest. They had located her over 30 minutes ago and hadn't let up in the chase. Finally, Kurenai slipped off one of the branches and landed on the ground on her feet. Now, Naruto yelled as the three jumped down and surrounded her in their respective stances. Kurenai grinned. I'm glad you managed to finally locate me, but I'm afraid you won't be able to pass, she said calmly before she disappeared in a poof of smoke. The tweens gasped. Kage Bunshin, Naruto said out of realization before he and the others felt a cold metal pressed against their necks. Naruto looked around to see 2 other Kurenais holding his teammates hostage. I'm disappointed in all of you, she said. No one managed to notice me in the bushes while I sent a Bunshin masked with perfume to send you on a wild goose chase while the real me followed you. You've got so much potential, that's what surprises me. To her confusion, they all smirked. That's the point, Naruto said before they all disappeared in puffs of smoke. Her eyes widened at the fact she had been tricked. She felt a rumble of earth beneath her and barely had enough time to jump away from Naruto's hand popping out of the ground. Headhunter, the genjutsu mistress thought in amazement. Out of the corner of her eye she saw the other 2 jump from the trees and chucked a few shurikens and a swarm of kikaichu bugs at her. She jumped away to dodge them as she landed in a nearby clearing. They all landed and surrounded her again. How did you? She trailed off in surprise. The ones you tracked weren't the real us. We met on the outskirts of the training grounds to discuss a real plan while I made hang buncheons to distract you. Once we finished, we hid behind the bushes with Shino's bugs masking his and Hina-chan's scent while I hid my chakra signature. As soon as you chased the clones down, we followed a safe distance behind you in order to ambush the real you. Now that that's over, we're going to complete the second half, he said as he pulled out his claws. Kurenai looked at the weapons in surprise. She never saw him use them in the academy. Then again, deceit is key to ninjas. Before she could comprehend this any further, she saw Hinata charge at her with her dojutsu activated. Kurenai managed to dodge all of her strikes but had to jump backwards as Naruto lunged forward and tried to swipe at her head. She skidded a few inches before realizing she had to get serious. She made a few hand signs. Demonic illusion. Tree binding death, she whispered as she vanished. Before they could recognize the jutsu, a tree wrapped around them. A Kurenai then emerged from each of the trees with a kunai in her hand. She raised the weapon and stabbed them all in the jugular veins, before their whole bodies dissolved into many leaves. 1. Cursing mentally, she bit her lip to escape the genjutsu just in time to see the real Shino finish his hand signs. Spindle formation, he said, barely above a whisper as his insects were sent toward her in a spiraling motion. She jumped to the side, with only a few dozen bugs actually catching her. Damn, I have no idea how their battle strategy works, Kurenai thought as the Kikai bugs kept eating away at her chakra. But it looks like Hinata has short range, Naruto has mid-range, and Shino has long range. Switching to offense, she made 2 shadow clones and charged at her future students. One of the clones made it to Hinata first and tried to spin kick her in the temple. Rotation. The Hyuga called out as she released a huge amount of chakra from all her Tenketsu points, too, and spun to parry the attack, creating a 5-foot blue dome around her. The force was so great it knocked the clone to the ground and dispelled. While this was happening, the second clone was fighting with Shino, both using kunai. Shino was doing an adequate job at blocking her attacks but was caught off guard when the clone spun around and slammed the butt of the kunai against the back of his head. He then disappeared in a cluster of Kikai bugs, 3, which then swarmed her and sucked away all the clone's chakra, dispelling it. The real Kurenai was currently dodging Naruto's swipes. Trying a different tactic, he jumped a few feet back and went through a series of hand signs. To her surprise, he didn't call out the jutsu's name but merely took in a huge breath and shot out a small gust of wind. She was so surprised that she didn't have time to dodge it and was sent colliding with a tree behind her. She managed to get back on her feet but was halted when Hinata and Shino both had kunais at her neck, and Naruto, who, to her shock, had a fully charged Rasengan in his left hand. Yield, he ordered. She put her hands up to show she was complying. Impressive. Looks like you all passed. She was interrupted by the alarm clock going off. Just in time too. I tell the Hokage about your success so you have the rest of the day off. Meet me back here at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. They all nodded as she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Phew. Great work, guys. Naruto complimented. We only did well thanks to you plan, Naruto-san. Shino praised. He smiled. Hey, Shikamaru said if we passed we should meet him at the local barbecue joint to celebrate, he suggested. Sounds like fun, Naru-kun, and knowing Shikamaru, he probably passed hours ago. Hinata said, knowing full well he was a genius despite his laziness. Nodding, Naruto grabbed a hold of them and sunshined. Moments later, they reappeared outside the entrance of the restaurant and went inside. Naruto took a quick gaze around the place until he saw a smiling Shikamaru waving at them to their left. The new teammate approached the table to see a nervous Choji and a bored Ino. Hey guys, good to see you all passed. Thanks, Shikamaru, Naruto said as he and his teammates sat on one side of the booth with Team 10 on the other side. I'm guessing you passed too, so how's your sensei? Naruto questioned. They all chatted and ate for about an hour as they learned more about each other. While Ino was still a die-hard Sasuke fangirl, she seemed to warm up to Naruto and his teammates. Choji was nervous when they first arrived because when he first started the academy, his uncle Uso Tasuki told him to stay away from Naruto and anyone he associates with. When he asked why, he was told he was a bad influence and if he was caught talking to him he would convince his mother to stop cooking all of his favorite foods. Being an academic, he immediately shut up, but he still regretted agreeing. He even spent less time with Shikamaru, his best friend, because of that. But judging how Naruto acted, it seemed he was okay and his uncle was just overreacting. Naruto learned that Choji too loved ramen and Ino was a tad bit bossy, but still fun hanging out with. They all said their goodbyes and headed to their homes. Naruto was excited. "Excellent work, Team 8. You've beaten the old record by 7 minutes, the third Hokage said in approval. He still couldn't believe that there was actually a ranking for how fast you could catch a cat. But seeing as how feisty it was and would run away from the daimyo's wife several times a week, it seemed necessary. What did baffle him was that it would become a tame kitten as soon as Naruto showed up. It's as if all felines seemed comfortable toward him. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Kurenai replied politely, but on the inside was getting really sick of chasing that damn cat once a day. She still had claw marks from the last time she tried to capture the little demon. She watched in satisfaction as the daimyo's wife squeezed the poor cat to near death. That's it. Just a little more. Hinata, Shino, and Kurenai thought with eerily, then picked up a sheet of paper on his desk. Let's see. We have pulling weeds at our Suna liaison's home, tending to the Nara deer farms, babysitting the. Before he could go any further, Naruto raised his hand. Hokage-sama, if I may, we've done over 50 D-rank missions in little over a month. I believe we're qualified for at least 3 C ranks. Naruto interjected as Kasumi had taught him basic Konoha politics to get the council off his back should he slip up, and ranked missions popped up once or twice. Iruka shook his head. Naruto, Hokage-sama will give you a higher ranked mission when he sees your read. Actually, Iruka, I have a few C-ranked missions available. I was just waiting for one of you to speak up. Everyone's eyes twitched. We have a low C-ranked mission to protect a bridge builder on the way to his home country in Wave. Kurenai seemed a little unsure. I'm not sure. Tora, no. Was the cry of the daimyo's wife as they all watched Tora escape her death grip as the fat woman chased after her. Well, take it. Kurenai almost yelled, causing everyone to sweat drop. Nodding, the aged Kage pushed the intercom and ordered, "Send in the client." A few seconds later, an old bearded man dressed in dark rags with a straw hat on walked through the door. "This is the group supposed to protect me. One Jonin and bunch of brats?" The old man questioned as he took a swig of his sake. "Mustn't kill client. Mustn't kill client. Mustn't kill client," was the inner mantra of the 3 genin, still keeping stoic features on the outside. "Don't worry, sir. My team is more than enough to handle a few bandits," Kurenai said calmly, as she had dealt with idiots like these before. He took another sip from his bottle. "Whatever. I'm Tazuna, the super bridge builder. I'll meet y'all outside the gates in an hour," he said curtly as he left the room. Team 8 sighed, though it was still better than catching Tora again. Konoha gates. 1 hour later. Tazuna and Team 8 were all outside the gates going over one more supply check. "Is everybody ready?" the Genjutsu mistress asked. After brief nods from the genin, they all set out for their first C rank. Sometime later. The self-proclaimed super bridge builder and his escort were currently treading down the dirt road toward their destination. Naruto was in front of Tazuna with Hinta and Shino on the side, with Kurenai bringing up the rear. Something though caught the attention of Team 8. A puddle. It hasn't rained in weeks, they all thought. The team glanced at one another. Kurenai mouthed the words, "Let me handle it." Confirming they understood, they all returned their gaze to the front. As soon as Kurenai walked next to the puddle, she dropped an explosive note in it. Boom. The note went off as two masked figures were sent flying out of the puddle before landing in a heap some 10 feet away. Growling angrily, they stood up. You're gonna pay for that, bitch. One of them said as they both launched chains from a gauntlet on one of their arms. Before she could blink, the chains wrapped around her. The two smirked. One down, one of them said as they pulled on their chains. To their shock, the kunoichi turned into many petals instead of gore. Shit. Genjutsu, they thought as they bit their lips to release it. As soon as they did, however, they only saw a large swarm of bugs headed straight towards them. Nearly all of them hit their mark as the two failed ambushers were struggling to stand. Before they could plan their next move, one felt a sharp pain in their neck while the other felt it in his stomach. The two collapsed unconscious as the two blows were courtesy of Hinata and Naruto. Good work, Kurenai said with a small smile, but quickly vanished. You interrogate Tazuna while I deal with these two bozos. The genin nodded as they witnessed the two masked men get dragged off with barely any protest. They quickly gave a hardened gaze at Tazuna, who was sweating bullets. Do you mind telling why we have two ninja, who seem to be at least Chunin level, trying to kill us? Naruto demanded. But was immediately silenced by a substantial amount of ki from Naruto. Don't lie to us, you old drunk. He yelled, causing his teammates to shudder. I've never seen Naruto-san like this. Shino thought. I had no idea Naru-kun could be so demanding, Hinata thought with a hint of arousal. The ki was soon dissipated as he saw his sensei emerged. The two were hired by Gato of Gato Shipping Industries to kill Tazuna here. That was all I could get before they passed out. They're tied up and I've sent a messenger hawk for Anbu to come pick them up. Their sights fell back to the bridge builder. After a long sob story on how horrible life was in his home country, Kurenai turned to her students. Well, what do you think? This mission could be A-ranked. I say we continue. No way I'm letting that punk Gato bleed the country dry. Naruto said with raw determination in his eyes. Gato seems corrupt. It is only logical that we press on while sending for backup. Shino said. He included logic in his sentences almost as much as two certain green-clad youths mentioned youth. I agree, we took out two Chunin with ease. A little bit of backup can easily help out. Hinata said. Sighing, the Jonin nodded. Alright then, I send a messenger hawk to request support. Meanwhile in the bushes, looks like the demon brothers failed. A female voice whispered to a figure next to her who rolled his eyes. Thank you, Captain Obvious. He said sarcastically, gaining a smack upside the head from the female. Will you shut up? Let's report back to Zabuza-sama. The male nodded as they vanished in a shunshin. Naruto was in a small boat, gazing at the almost opaque horizon with a somewhat bored expression on his face. He was sitting to the right of Hinata and Shino on her left with Tazuna and his sensei across from them. The mist was so dense he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. After quite some time he could see a something very large cut through the fog. As it fully came into view, it could be easily recognized as a bridge. That's the bridge you're building. Naruto whispered to Tazuna, who smiled with pride. That's right. As soon as it's done the whole country will thrive. He replied in a hushed voice. That's quite impressive, Tazuna-san. The whole bridge could withstand several hundred tons of weight at a time. Shino said. Hey, keep it down. Say anything above a whisper and we could easily be caught. The old man ordered as he was paddling slowly instead of running the motor. He was not in the mood to be publicly executed should Gato's patrol be nearby. Team 8 and Tazuna eventually reached the shore and paid the rower. The mist only seemed to get worse and worse as they tread down the path. Naruto's senses pick something up. Steel and blood. There's definitely some swordsman nearby with one who isn't. I can't tell if he or she's a threat or not. He thought because whoever was close by didn't want to be found with their charka signatures and sent masked. He heard a faint swishing in distance and it was getting closer. Get down! Naruto yelled. They all managed to get down in time as a massive sword, clearly a Zanpakuto, was sent horizontal-wise to lob their heads off. The sword lodged itself in a nearby tree with a man in camouflage pants, brown sandals, and a bandaged mask covering his face similar to Kakashi's landed on the handle with his arms crossed. He, this is who they sent to protect the old fart. A jonin and a few brats. It seems the leaf has gotten even more arrogant. The tall man growled with venom. You could barely make out a scratched mist headband on his forehead. Protect Tazuna-san, Kurenai ordered while pulling out a kunai. The team immediately surrounded the bridge builder with Naruto sending a few clones to support Kurenai. Hinata had her Byakugan activated and Shino's bugs swarming around him. Hinata was shocked to see the entire mist had chakra in it. This must be an ambush tactic. Cage Bunshin a smart brat you got there. It still won't stop me from butchering everyone here though, he said, darkly chuckling at his own twisted joke. Meanwhile in the bushes, are you sure Zabuza can hold his own against them? Two of the genin look like clan members and the jonin is Konoha's genjutsu mistress, Kurenai Yuhi. A dark red-haired male said to his female companion. Don't worry Akai-Nisan, Zabuza-sama can handle these petty ninja, if not I'll step in, she said turning to him. I hope you're right Haku-ni-chan. Akai replied, still having his doubts. Back to the fight. I'm getting bored. I think I'll end this. Now. He cried the last part, releasing a massive amount of ki. The pure force alone almost brought the clan heirs to their knees and actually dispelled Naruto's clones. Internally they were terrified, but they still steeled themselves. They knew that as soon as they adorned that headband they have to sacrifice their lives for the village if need be. Are you brats getting scared? You have no idea what it's like to be a shinobi. You think it's all fun and games and you can be heroes while walking away without a scratch. It's not. You're going to have to lay down your lives when the time comes and it's gonna be right now, he said as he practically teleported right in front of the horrified old man. He raised his Zanpakuto and brought it down on his head. Squelch. Drip. Drip. A few drops of blood fell to the ground as everyone was shocked to see that the sword was blocked by a smirking Naruto with his bare hands. While Zabuza kept a stoic face he was amazed on the inside. What the? That should have cleaved him and the old man in half. How strong is this kid? Were the thoughts of the demon of the mist and his hidden assailants. Next thing Zabuza knew he felt a sharp pain in his back as his whole form dispersed into water. Damn, Mizu Bunshin. Naruto thought while checking over his hands to make sure the wounds weren't too deep. He was mentally berating himself for forgetting to bring out his claws as soon as the former mist shinobi appeared. While he and the missing nin were plotting their next move, he felt a small nudge from Hinata. Naruto, I can sense two figures in the bushes with fairly high chakra signatures and one massive one straight ahead, past sensei, Naruto grinned. Perfect, was all he said before disappearing then reappearing in front of Kurenai. Naruto what are you? She couldn't finish her question as Naruto went through a flurry of hand signs before taking a huge breath of air and exhaling it, sending a hurricane-level gust of wind right at the lone figure. The force itself dispersed the mist and nearly sent the hidden warriors off their feet. The figure was sent nearly in 1/8 of a mile backwards before hitting the ground, splashing water all over the ground. Another Bunshin. This was starting to frustrate Naruto. Zabuza was catching his breath atop a nearby tree. First, where did he learn wind release? Gust of oblivion and where did he learn the damn Rasengan? He screamed inside his head as the real him saw the whole display. The mist was gone and he couldn't use his trademark silent killing technique. Looks like he's going to have to go on the frontal assault. He lunged out of the trees and swung the blunt end of his sword at Naruto. Not having enough time to react he received the blow full force and was knocked several feet away, cracking several ribs in the process. Zabuza was about to charge again but soon found himself bound to a tree that came out of nowhere. Kurenai then emerged from the tree with a kunai. Hope you didn't forget about me, she said as she drove it into his neck. Shit. Then as soon as it appeared, the tree vanished along with the Jonin. Zabuza's knees buckled as he clutched his throat at the sudden surge of pain. Damn it, Genjutsu. I need to be careful, he thought as Naruto finally rose from the ground and brought out his claws. Zabuza got into his sword fighting stance and blocked the blonde's strikes when he lunged forward. No one could believe their eyes. Naruto, the former Dobi, was going toe-to-toe with an A- ranked missing nin. Clang, 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 was all they could hear as the two were engaging in a deadly dance. Every strike was dodged or blocked. Sparks were flying with each parry with nobody gaining the upper hand. Snapping out of her stupor, Kurenai charged forward and joined Naruto in the array. The added Jonin was starting to put Zabuza on the ropes. Damn, I just need to get to the shore. The missing nin leapt backward and made several water clones. The clones charged the leaf ninja with the real one heading toward the shore. With Akai and Haku, Akai's hands were twitching, the battle was calling to him. He was about to grab his weapon when he was stopped by Haku. She grasped his hand and said, "Don't." Zabuza-sama said not to interfere. "If he starts to lose, I'll jump in." Got it. Akai had no choice but to nod, as it would be much worse to disobey Zabuza than anything else. It was reluctant though. The thrill of the fight was making his heart race. He wanted to join in. Back at the battle, Zabuza finally managed to reach the shore and leapt onto the water. He started making seals but was halted as several kunai and shuriken came hurtling towards him. Zabuza took out his sword and managed to block them all, with only two managing to get past. He put the Zanpakuto on his back once more but heard a brief poof behind him. He dreadfully turned around to see two Narutos behind him. Crap, they must have been hanged weapons. Before he could further the situation, he felt something, or rather someone, latch onto him. He moved his head to see it was yet another Naruto clone. Several more Narutos latched onto him and held him in place as one of the clones behind him had a charged white Rasengan in his palm. The clone was then grabbed by the second one and flung toward Zabuza. Wind release. Wind Rasengan. The clone cried. One word went through Zabuza's mind. The jutsu came careening with Zabuza's back. He flew all the way back to the land and tumbled for a bit before landing in a heap of broken bones. He stood up on shaky legs and thought, "This is bad. I can't hold out forever, and I can't let Akai and Haku join in, or else they can be taken hostage. There isn't enough moisture in the air for Haku to use her Hyuden. I knew Akai should have brought his Okatana. Looks like I have no other choice," he thought as he made an unfamiliar hand sign. Before the leaf ninja could recognize the seal, they gasped as Tsusenbon came hurling out of a tree and pierced his neck. He slumped to the ground as a ninja in blue and brown garb with a hunter nin mask shunshined next to Zabuza. "Thank you for weakening him," a feminine voice said. "I've been tracking him down for months. I'll dispose of the body." "Thank you, Leaf Nin," she thanked as she took the body as she shunshined away. Relieved that the battle was over, Team 8 regrouped. "Is everyone okay?" Kurenai asked, still amazed at the display of skill Naruto possessed. "My ribs are a little busted and I need to patch my hands up," Naruto admitted. Sighing, the Jonin asked, "Is your house close by Tazuna-san?" "Yes, just a few miles north from here." Nodding, she headed in the direction with the others following. Hinata, though, was a little reluctant. She knew full well that something was wrong. Naruto had just entered Tazuna's house behind Kurenai and Tazuna with the rest of his team in tow. He looked around to see a long black, almost dark blue-haired, woman washing dishes with her back facing them. She was wearing a pink t-shirt and a long pink skirt with an apron over it. "Tsunami-chan, I'm back." The said woman turned around and gave a delighted smile. "Tu-san. I'm glad you're okay," she said as she walked up to him and gave him a hug, which he gladly returned. The bridge builder turned his head and gestured at the leaf shinobi. "These brave ninjas saved me twice. With them around I'll be able to finish the bridge in no time, he said. She politely bowed and said, "Thank you so much." She was cut off when she saw a small boy in a beige collared shirt and dark green overalls walk down the nearby hallway. He also had a blue striped fisherman's hat on. "Don't know the type. Who are these people, Okawa-san?" the little boy asked. "Oh, these are the brave ninjas are here to protect your grandfather while he completes the bridge." The boy merely shrugged his shoulders. "Whatever, they're just gonna die," he said with almost no emotion as he went back up the hall and went into his room. Tsunami sighed and turned to the shinobi. "I'm so sorry, that was my son Inari. There was a little incident a few years ago and it's what made him that way. It's still a touchy subject, so try and let it be. Dinner's almost done, would you like to join?" Teammate nodded and sat down at the dinner table. It was normal aside from Inari giving the leaf ninja weird looks. Once supper was over, Kurenai turned to her team. "It's getting late, so training will start first thing tomorrow. Rest up," she ordered as Tsunami directed her to her room. Meanwhile, Naruto was having a chat inside his head. "Do you really think I should? They might what? Reject you after all you three have been through. I know for a fact that both the Hyuga and Aburame clans don't see you as a demon, so they haven't been brainwashed. I know, it's just that they're all I have except for you, Kasumi ni-chan, Iruka, and Ichiraku's." Sigh, "Alright, I'll tell them." He finished the conversation in his head and looked at Hinata and Shino. Hey, can I talk to you both in private?" "Sure, Naru-kun," Hinata said with Shino nodding. Naruto led them to one of the rooms and closed the doors. As soon as they entered, he took out a sheet of paper and placed it on the wall. He made a hand sign and the seal briefly glowed neon blue and returned to its original condition. He then turned around to face his teammates, who both saw the distraught look on his face. "Look guys, there's something I got to tell you." "What is it, Naruto-san?" Shino said, his voice laced with concern. Sigh. "You know the story about the Kyuubi no Kitsune, right?" They both nodded. "Yes, the Yondaime killed it at the cost of his own life," the bug user said, not sure where this was going. Naruto looked down and said, "No, that isn't true. While the Yondaime was strong, even he couldn't kill a demon." The clan heirs were stunned at hearing that. He had to seal it within something, or rather someone. Their eyes widened as they were putting the pieces together. Then that means, Hinata stuttered with Naruto nodding. "Yes, the fox attacked the village on October 10th, my birth date, so the Yondaime sealed it within me," he said as he lifted up his shirt and saw nothing. But when Naruto pushed a little bit of chakra through his body, a very complex tattoo-like image appeared on his stomach. And not just anyone, not wanting a family to live with the burden, he sealed it within his only son. Naruto wasn't sure what to expect. Fear, hatred, disgust, but what he didn't expect was to Hinata to walk up to him and enravel him in a hug with Shino placing a hand on his shoulder. "Naru-kun, we don't care about that. You're still our friend." "I concur. Despite your condition, we know full well you're no demon," Shino said, as no demon would do anything Naruto has done for as long as he knew him. Naruto was speechless. It was only a few words, but they meant so much to him. Why you accept me?" he stuttered out. "Of course, Naru-kun, what did you think was going to happen?" Naruto noticeably flinched. Well, the Yondaime's dying wish was for his child to be seen as a hero, but that wasn't the case. The moment the Sandaime announced I was a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice, the whole village called for my death. The two gasped at that. The death of an infant. Over the course of my life, a majority of the village made my life miserable. Stores wouldn't let me buy anything or charged me 3 times the amount of something in poor condition. I was kicked out of the orphanage when I was 4 and had to be given an apartment in which I had to pay the bills, which the landlord overcharged. I made it thanks to Oji-san giving me an allowance. When I entered the academy, the instructors would sabotage my training or ignore me completely. They rigged my tests every time, hence why I was the Dobie. And the worst part, when I was younger, the village would form mobs and beat me within an inch of my life. It was always worse on my birthday. By now Hinata was in tears and Shino had his bugs furiously swarm all over his body, but Naruto still continued. The reason I didn't tell you before was because you were all I had aside from a few others, and if you rejected me, I might have done something drastic, he said with tears streaming down his cheeks. Hinata, and now Shino had hugged him as tight as they could. Well, you don't have worry about that, Naruto. We'll still always see you as you, Shino said as he dropped the suffix. He felt too close to him now to use a formality like that. After what seemed like an hour, Naruto broke away from the hug and wiped his tears away. Thank you so much, both of you. They all smiled and headed back outside. Naruto was still sitting on the couch as he recalled what happened merely an hour ago. He heard the front door click open. He glanced at the direction of the noise to see two people he really didn't want to see. Sasuke and Sakura. HMPH. I knew you and your pathetic team wouldn't be enough to handle a little mission, the emo said arrogantly. Yeah, you and those freaks can't do anything right, his trusty follower screeched. If it wasn't for Hinata sleeping soundly and Shino placing a hand on his shoulder, Naruto would have already been at their throats. Alright, that's enough. We're here to provide backup, not start a fight, Kakashi said as he and Kiba walked through the door as well, with Akamaru atop his head. Sasuke merely, Ed and Sakura drooled over how cool her, Sasuke-kun, was. By now Hinata had woken up to see the two idiots, much to her dismay, but was a little happy to see Kiba once more. The three rose from their seats. It's not that I don't doubt your abilities, Kakashi-sensei, but why did they send a genin team as backup? Naruto asked. Granted, they themselves were a genin team that easily defeated two Chunin, but with the threat of other Jonin and Gato's overall thug base, he was expecting a Jonin or even Anbu. The one-eyed man sighed. The council in their infinite wisdom believed that Sasuke was more than enough to handle an A-rank mission by himself, and with me by his side we could be unstoppable, he said with sarcasm, but Sasuke and Sakura didn't seem to notice it and smirked. After hearing all the commotion, Kurenai and Tsunami finally exited their rooms and entered the living room. The Genjutsu mistress took one glance at Team 7. There are backup, she deadpanned, causing her team and Kiba to chuckle, Kakashi and Tsunami to sweat drop, and the Banshee and Emo to growl. He was about to arrogantly proclaim that she should watch her mouth in front of an elite until Kakashi gave his shoulder a tight squeeze. I believe it's getting late. Are there enough rooms for us? Kakashi asked. Tsunami nodded. There should be, if not, two of you will have to share. Sakura immediately latched on to Sasuke at hearing that. He prayed to whatever kami out there he wouldn't be raped. The former Anbu looked at his students. You three get some rest. Me and Kurenai need to discuss a few things. Reluctantly they agreed and let Tsunami lead them. Same goes for you, Kurenai said to her students. They too agreed and headed off to their rooms. Once the final door closed, the two Jonin sat down at the dining table. So how has your team doing? Kakashi asked, pulling out a small flask of sake. Kurenai smiled proudly and said, Great. With them being friends, their teamwork is excellent along with their independent skills. You know, I've seen Hinata as more confident, but she still wears that coat. Why's that? Well, she first wore it because she was self-conscious about her body, but now she wears it so other boys don't stare at her since she has developed a little early. Kurenai said. It was a bit of a surprise that Naruto suggested it, but after hearing when the two went out on a date without the coat, every boy his age kept staring at her, making her feel uncomfortable, she wholeheartedly agreed. The one-eyed Jonin took a sip of the sake and sighed. Well, my team isn't even close to being great. Kiba is the only one who shows any decent qualities of a ninja but is still headstrong. Sakura does absolutely nothing at all except stare at her precious Sasuke-kun during practice with no desire whatsoever to learn anything. She's a worst-case scenario fangirl. Sasuke. Don't even get me started with Sasuke. He frequently demands I devote all of my time to train him and still seeks guidance from others in order to kill his brother. No doubt he'll abandon the village for more power once he bleeds Konoha dry. Kurenai scowled. And you let them get away with this? I have no choice. I've tried to report this to the Hokage, but he is always halted by the council into doing no more than a warning. They gotten way too much power since Sensei died. Thankfully, since we're out on a mission, he has no choice but to answer to me, he said, smirking at the end. Now was the perfect time to give him a good case of humility. Kurenai shook her head at seeing how much the brat was spoiled. Man, I worry about that kid. Seeing his entire clan killed by his brother was one thing. But the village has filled his head to the brim with lies about him being a kami amongst kamis. 50 Ryu says he'll get killed on his first solo mission. I don't doubt that. He'll also get other killed because of his arrogance. He probably sees human beings as mere stepping stones for him to reach his goal. Itachi really screw him up with that damn Sharingan, the male Jonin said, taking another swig of sake. Kurenai stood up from her chair. Hopefully we'll break him out of his funk before it's too late, she said, though even she was severely doubting that. Good night, she called as she walked down the hallways. Night, Kakashi called back. I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm planning on it, he thought, taking a gulp of sweet stress reliever. The next morning, nearby forest. After a light breakfast, Team 7 and 8 were all standing in a small clearing. All the students were lined up next to each other with their respected sensei opposite of them. Kakashi spoke first. Okay, my team will be learning to climb trees without the use of their hands. Everyone was shocked at hearing that, but for different reasons. But sensei, that's impossible. Team 8 just gave Sakura an, "Are you kidding me?" look. Well, at least Hina-chan beat her as the top kunoichi of the year. The team thought at the sheer stupidity of her. Kurenai sighed. Kakashi, it's been over a month and you still haven't taught them tree walking. For Kami's sake, I taught my team that in the first week. Hinata and Shino are on water walking and Naruto is already on kunai balancing. Sasuke gritted his teeth at how strong the clanless freak, as well as the inferior clan heirs, were getting. He was an Uchiha, so he should have that kind of power so he can kill him. I wanted to teach them that just as early, Kurenai. The one-eyed Jonin defended. But with Sakura's lack of motivation to learn and Sasuke wanting to learn more powerful jutsus, and your overall laziness. The female Jonin mentally added. We just couldn't find the time. Team 8 scowled at how poor of an excuse he had, but was surprised when they saw a faint smirk outline his mask. However, I couldn't do anything because two certain people would come running to the council every time I tried to discipline them. But now that we're outside the village, those certain people have no choice but to answer to me with no repercussions once we get back. Now the other team was smirking, with Sasuke and Sakura were either scowling or sweating. Now, as I was saying, you'll be, hey, can one of your students explain, Kurenai? He asked. This was a perfect time to teach the emo some humility. Kurenai immediately caught on to what he was doing and smirked. Of course, Hinata, explain, she ordered. The said genin nodded and walked toward a tree. This exercise is known as tree walking. All you have to do is maintain a steady supply of chakra to the soles of your feet so you can stick to surfaces. Since your feet are the hardest place of your body to concentrate chakra, this aids in your control and reserves. Kiba was the only one who was actually paying attention, as the other two refused listen to some Hyuga bitch act like she was better than them, an Uchiha elite and his future wife. That's about it in a nutshell, so try it out for yourself. Use kunai to mark your progress, and it's best if you get a running start. Hinata explained. The three nodded and took out their own kunai and all ran up the tree. Kiba made it about halfway before having to backflip off the tree to avoid falling on his The other two, however, didn't put in any chakra into their feet, so they couldn't make it more than 2 steps before falling back down. It looks like somebody didn't listen to my lecture. Hinata teased. Sasuke growled. Shut your mouth, you white-eyed bitch. The would have gone on with his rant if Naruto didn't nail him in the gut with a solid hook, sending him to his knees. Watch what you say, Uchiha. Say that again, I'll make sure you won't be able to revive you clan. Naruto threatened as he saw a trickle of blood come out of the emo's mouth. Naruto baka. Apologize to Sasuke-kun of so help me all, that's enough. Kakashi barked. Kurenai, send your capable team somewhere else and I'll deal with these two. The Jonin nodded and led Team 8 out of the clearing, leaving an irked Kiba and a furious Sasuke and Sakura. Uzumaki, I swear I will kill you and everyone you care about. I swear it on my Uchiha name. Sasuke thought as he saw Team 8 leave the area to train in something that he should be learning. Omake. Motivation. Uzumaki, I swear I will kill you and everyone you care about. I swear it on my Uchiha name. The brooding would have had more time to swear other things that aren't going to happen had he not heard 2 separate puffs of smoke. He turned around to see a dog wrapped in bandages and a big black dog almost as tall as Kakashi appear. Ue, bull, give these two a little bit of motivation, the summoner said in a sickly sweet voice. The 2 dogs growled menacingly and charged at the 2. Payback's a bitch. Kakashi and Kiba thought as they watched the 2 furiously run up the tree and fall back down into the jaws of the summons. They really should have listened.